Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage DJ Wheat, Patrick Gilmore, and Mike Frazzini from Amazon Games.
Thank you. Gentlemen, after you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Oh. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to
Hello
you,
there.
Marcus.
I'm actually really excited for this because this is something that I'm very passionate about, seeing sort of innovations that are happening on Twitch. And we're here to talk a little bit about community-driven gaming. And if you don't know what that is, we're definitely going to break it down for you a little bit. But this is kind of interesting because this is not our first rodeo together, either of these folks. Like, I guess sort of after chatting yesterday, of course, Mike, I want you to introduce yourself, but we got a chance to talk about a year ago when Amazon acquired Twitch. But please introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Mike Frazzini. I've been at Amazon for 11 years. Spent a little bit of time in our advertising business and then some time in our books business. And since 2009, I've been in games. Like many people here, grew up in the 80s playing a lot of games. In the 90s, I ran some computer stores, and we had LAN parties at the time. Played a lot of UT and Quake. And then a few weeks ago, I got a chance to be at the International and to see how LAN parties have evolved since the late 90s. It's pretty impressive.
And I've been to a lot of LAN parties in my time too, but I guarantee you there are no LAN parties that had $8 million or $18 million in prizes.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe like some free drinks and video cards, but yeah, not quite like that. And of course, please welcome also Patrick Gilmore, who we were chatting yesterday, and in chatting, I was like, oh, that's right. We've done some things together because you worked on a game, Medal of Honor Airborne, and I think you said 2007, right?
2006, 2007, yeah.
And we actually went out to EALA and got a chance to interview you, and it was one of those like, oh yeah, Patrick, we've totally met before.
After all this time, 10 years.
Yeah, so please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background.
I'm Patrick Gilmore. I've been making games for about 20 years, a little over 20 years, going way back, 16-bit era. I was Disney producer on Aladdin for Sega Genesis, was the executive producer on Medal of Honor 1, and then about 6 years ago took over Double Helix Games, worked with the team there, built an incredible studio. Most recently, we delivered Strider and Killer Instinct before being acquired by Amazon, and the acquisition closed about 18 months ago. So we've been a part of Amazon for a short time and got some amazing things in development.
Great. So as we kind of like drop into the idea of community-driven gaming, Mike, I'm gonna start with you, and I'm gonna let you kind of kick this off because, and I bet you that every single person out here has probably asked this question, whether it was during the acquisition or over the past year. It's been about a year now, but you know, Amazon acquired Twitch, and a big deal on a lot of levels. But you specifically, I think you kind of had a really good idea on sort of, you know, what was going to happen here. So, why did Amazon acquire Twitch?
Before I get into that, I have to say my favorite, we followed a lot of the internet posts when the announcement was made, and by far my favorite post, and easily was, it was on Reddit. Somebody says, Amazon acquires Twitch, gaming community unsure on how to overreact. And so I thought that was a good testimony that you know, I think that a lot of people, a lot of gamers in particular, like Amazon, obviously they're super passionate about Twitch. But to speak to your to answer your question directly, you know, games are all about bringing people together, and they always have been. And you talked a lot this morning around the importance of community and everything you guys have done and how you've seen the tools evolved that allow broadcasters to interact with their fans and interact with the community and allow that all to form. And you know, within the game industry, there's always this question, which is, you know, the game industry is always changing. What's the next thing? What's the hot thing? What's trending? And all along, community has been this remarkably, you know, constant. You know, early on, it was about your buddy's basement, Nintendo Power Magazine, and the arcade, and obviously what we see today is just incredible global communities interacting at scale. And so the simple answer to the question is we think games are all about community, and we really think the community is the center of gravity of the entire game industry, and it's absolutely amazing. And to see that Twitch has become one of the largest and fastest growing communities within games, and really to think that it's just getting started is an absolutely it's an inspiring and amazing thing to be part of, and I think you know this, but we have just tremendous reverence for everything Twitch has achieved, and I love working with you guys.
We enjoy working with you too.
Yeah.
When you look across the industry, when you make games, you're always looking about 2 years out because it takes a long time to develop a game. So you're looking for trends, you're looking for things that converge and trying to anticipate where the market is going to be. And we look at it and there's all these disconnected trends, whether it's curators who are broadcasters who are curating games, crowdfunding, people who are sponsoring games, gamers who are playing competitively and champions. So what it means to be a gamer has evolved radically just over the last 5 years. And we kind of look at all of that stuff as community-driven gaming, and we see Twitch as kind of like the crown jewel of that movement, because it's sort of the centerpiece of how people are interacting around games.
So obviously Twitch serves as you mentioned, both a video platform, but also as a community platform. And I want to talk a little bit more just kind of by definition of community-driven gaming. The examples like we've seen already. Twitch Plays Pokemon, a community-driven game that was sort of operated by a program, but played by millions. And we've seen things like Choice Chamber, which is a broadcaster and audience member sort of interaction. Things like Quiplash, where it is typically us playing, but then other people can participate. So, can we just talk a little bit more about how do you guys define sort of community-driven gaming as it relates to all of those things?
Well, I think about what's not community-driven gaming are these games that are sort of fire and forget games, a game that is transactional. You just make the game, put it on a disc, put it in a box, put it out there, hope somebody buys it. And I really see that sort of era of game production going away. Community-driven gaming is all about a game that's live in the context of its development, so that the game itself is evolving in the context of broadcasters who are talking about the game, viewers who are watching it, commentators who are commenting about what's good about it, what's bad about it. But then the game itself evolves as in the context of that community. The community is driving the production of the game, and they're changing it. So you think about like a TV series, a new pilot series. They're always good on like the third or fourth episode because that's the first time anybody who's made this series is getting any kind of feedback from people. And so community-driven gaming is just a new path to quality because you have amazing access to the gamers who are actually engaging in the content and making suggestions and helping to shape the development of the game.
Do you have anything to add to that, Mike?
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add is you have community members that are creating content in their own right. So obviously broadcasters are fantastic content creators. You see modding, user-generated levels, professional esports competitions. These are people this is the community taking the games and then building content on top of it and just creating new experiences for fans and the community at large. And to see that vibrancy is just amazing. And I think one of the analogies that always holds well in this regard and works is when you think about the amount of time you've spent in your life watching the movies, the Star Wars movies, relative to the amount of time you've spent in your life wearing a Star Wars t-shirt or carrying a lunchbox or talking about it with your friends. That notion that all that activity and all that community that's being created outside of the act of actually watching, in our view, sort of represents what that means to have just a vibrancy within the community. Mm-hmm. And with games, we're seeing that just explode in many dimensions at the same time. And communities have always been important to the games industry, of course. I just think the number of tools, the number of different ways to interact within the community and to interact with like-minded people for whom games are their lifestyle in and around the games they love, that's kind of how we think about and define community-driven gaming.
So let's actually talk about that a little bit more, because the tool set, as you referenced the keynote this morning, and we did talk about, like where we had this audio, and then on top of it we added the chat, and that was sort of another layer that allowed us to go further in what we were doing. And so this is kind of a two-part question. The two-part question would be, first off, why do you think now seems to be the time when this is really coming to the limelight and when more folks are taking a closer look at it? And also, what do you feel are the tools that we've seen even in the last couple years that are driving that?
I think The answer to the question now is, I think it has a lot to do with availability of enabling technology. You gave, in your presentation this morning, you talked about how much bandwidth was a concern and how much the technology had to progress in order to provide the type of streaming video that Twitch provides today. And you look at that anywhere in the game industry, you know, like first-person shooters didn't blow up until, as we were talking about yesterday, the integrated server browser. And all of a sudden it was easy to find a match and it was easy to engage. And a form of community came together around that new technology. And so Twitch is this new technology, and you guys are constantly working to provide new types of tools for people to broadcast and engage, and for viewers to engage with their broadcasters. So I think the technology is always paving the road, but it's the fans and it's the gamers who are coming in to define what that means. Right.
Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think everything Patrick said is right on. I mean, one of the things you said this morning I thought was nailed it, which was Twitch provides the tools, then the community shows what can be done with them. And so the tools are critically important, but this scale is incredible too. To see over 100 million monthly active users, 1.7 million unique broadcasters every month, billions of minutes watched every month. To see that type of scale, if you're a game developer, one of your core critical things that you're trying to think about is how do you create an experience that a lot of people love and a lot of people they'll be able to reach and a lot of people can enjoy. And to have such vibrancy exist in and around Twitch, just in terms of the scale and the numbers, and you see esports, and they all have these sort of remarkable headline numbers. And it's not, a few years ago it might have been a little bit more, maybe that'll happen, maybe that'll be big. And now it is already huge, and a lot of the conversations you have today are less around, maybe speculative as to whether or not something's going to be popular. It's just like what's going to happen with it, because this thing is on fire and it's growing so fast. There's so much interactivity that's happening with it.
And I mean, I've gotten the chance over the last couple of days to talk with you guys about this, and obviously something I'm really excited about. And I love chatting because it's very evident how passionate you guys are as well. So, what is inspiring your guys' teams right now, and in terms of and how is that influencing the games that are in development?
Oh man, there's a ton of stories here. And the first thing that comes to mind is. When you make games, it used to be that if you wanted to get feedback on your game, you sort of go to GameSpot or you go to Best Buy and you'd hang out and you kind of eavesdrop on conversations, or you ask the GameSpot guy, hey, is this game any good? And hope that he gives the answer that you want to hear. And now you've got Twitch. You've got literally millions of people that you can engage with and listen to. So I happened to be in Best Buy the other day and was buying a set of headphones, and I was on the headphone aisle, and there's this mom there with her son, and she's kind of standing back, and she's doing what moms do in Best Buy, kind of with their hands folded, waiting for her son to finish up. And I looked at the kid, and he's in the keyboard section with the headphones, and he's got these keyboards all laid out, and he's got headphones on, and he's like, yeah, I'm little Twitch, and I'm doing this. And I realized this 9-year-old kid is in Best Buy pretending to be a broadcaster. The people he admires are the broadcasters who are talking about games today. And it just made me go, wow, what the definition of what it means to be a gamer has just totally blown up. And if we're having that type of influence on a kid today, then that's an indication of how big it still has yet to become.
That's
I found that
that's a great story. Yeah. If you've got any more of those, we want to hear it. We want to hear more of them, for sure.
Well, you mentioned I do have another inspiration.
Please, just start dropping them.
Strider and Killer Instinct were the first games in the studio that we didn't put on a disc. They're the first games that were released digitally. So you didn't have manufacturing, you didn't have the process of creating a gold master and certifying it and going through this massive process. So the team was still 100% dedicated to the game at the time the game was launched. I'm talking about Killer Instinct. So we had this situation where the game goes out, and literally on one day you're working on the game, 100% of the people still working on it, and everybody's tuned into Twitch, and all of a sudden the Killer Instinct broadcasts start. And we realized this game that literally you can turn from somebody's work monitor and see the work in progress, and then turn and see a broadcaster who's actually playing the game live, and you could start to listen to what they're saying about the game. This amazing thing happened where Filthy Rich, who's our community manager, was playing, and he was the top-ranked Killer Instinct player, so he was literally playing on one monitor, and you could see him playing against the community. And on another monitor, no less than 10 feet away, there was somebody who's watching a stream, and he got matched to the person who was actually broadcasting. And the broadcaster said, oh my God, this guy's from Double Helix, this is Filthy Rich, I know who this is, I'm about to get my ass kicked. And Rich turns to all of us, and he says, what should I do? Should I go easy on him? And we're like, no, blow him up!
Blow him up!
Take him out! And so, and he did, and we listened to the broadcast, broadcast and we listened to the follow-up and listened to what the guy had to say, but it's this relationship between the guys who are making the game, who are super passionate about making players happy, about engaging with them, and then it's the broadcasters who are the curators and the leadership of that fan base, and it's the developers. So there's this great relationship between all of those people that it is everything we got into game development for times 1,000, because there's no delayed response. It's all right there. It's all right in front of you. And it makes the games better, and it makes everybody so much happier doing what they're doing.
Do you have any good stories, Mike?
Patrick has got excellent stories. I have a different reflection on it. It's not as good of a story, but the way we think about it is, you talked a lot this morning around, you asked like what's next, where's it going to go? You talked a lot this morning around just those incredibly rudimentary tools you had to use in 1999 in order to do the thing you wanted to do, and then all of a sudden you found this service that was meant for something else, but you were going to use it for what you wanted to because it was free bandwidth. And then as the tools progress, what's happened with broadcasters, they've been able to become more and more successful, and just the vibrancy of their fan bases increases and grows. And so one of the things we think is really interesting is you have this concept where you have a player, you have a collection of players, you have a broadcaster, and you have viewers all sharing in this common experience. And yet the games are only starting to embrace that really from the very beginning. So a lot of game developers think about Twitch from a marketing standpoint, and certainly it's certainly great for marketing because there's a lot of fans on it. There's people playing games that buy games that are, for whom games are their lifestyle. But the idea of thinking about your game design and how you might contemplate this idea that players and broadcasters and viewers are all sharing in this experience and the things you might be able to create. We saw it with Twitch Plays Pokemon. And what I think was so important about that wasn't like, hey, great, why don't we just rig up, which you coincidentally have done, like a whole bunch of other games to play, Twitch Plays Dark Souls or whatever. That's obviously awesome. But what I think it really did was totally bust open the reference set of what it meant to design a game in the context of Twitch. And so you started to see Choice Chamber, Upsilon Circuit, and these other games where they're starting to see that and they're starting to embrace it at the game design stage, at what is the experience I want to create for the people not just playing, but that are broadcasting, that are watching. You obviously have seen spectator mode do so well in a lot of games. But these are examples of tools that we're building and then creating, or building and then giving to the community, in large part, kind of like you said, to see what they do with them. And in a lot of what we're doing within Amazon Game Studios is trying to think about like, what do we think would be useful? What are the experiences that we might want to create? And then we're sort of trying to create this source of inspiration for the tools that we ultimately offer to the community. And then hopefully, if our games resonate well with customers, there'll be great examples for other people to sort of look to and see what we mean when we talk about community-driven games.
Have you guys ever had like any of those moments where it's just like, what if we did this, or what if an interaction was like this? Like, because you're sort of breaking new ground and thinking differently about how you might design games. Is this happening regularly?
Absolutely, it's happening all the time. I mean, Mike was talking yesterday about the prompt that went out sort of across the studios, like what can we do here, and the whiteboard sessions that happened, and the volume of ideas that came through. So a lot of what we think about right now. So for one thing, we have a lot of broadcasters in the studio to begin with, but then we've also sort of fully embraced the idea of broadcasting. And one of the things we did was, anytime we have an executive review, the teams do their executive review as a broadcast. And that was all about like, okay, understand what it's like. And so, we're bringing green screens into the office, we're miking, we're synchronizing audio, we're dealing with lighting, and we're like, oh my God, broadcasting is really, really difficult.
Right.
but by living that life, by understanding what people go to bring that type of content to their fans, we're trying to learn where are the places that we can optimize and what are the things that we can provide. And it's not just the sort of physical technology of broadcasting, it's what does a broadcaster want to show? It's like, what can we do inside the game? Can we provide different camera angles? Can we look at things like OBS or XSplit and think about how do we integrate some of the functionality that broadcasters really use? I was watching Renee the other day, and she interacts with her audience really well, and I was watching her look at the stream and then comment and go back to the game, and she was doing all this context switching, and it's kind of a marvel. And we're like, can we improve that? Can some of that be in the game? So really trying to look at the experience, live the experience a little bit ourselves, and then look at how we can design things into the game that make for better content ultimately.
So I want to follow up with the Renee question, but I have to just go back 1 second. Has there been a period of sort of, you've been a game developer for a very long time, a lot of great titles under your belt. Was there like a period of untraining, unlearning, because sort of the idea and the process behind developing a game is kind of like step, 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 but then we have a new way of thinking about it? I'm just curious.
For me, we met on Medal of Honor Airborne, and as part of Airborne, I literally flew around the world. Like everywhere there was a Medal of Honor community, I went there and I met with them. So I was in Poland, I was in Germany, I was in France, I was in Italy. And when we were in Germany, we sat down with this community and they started just drilling me with questions. I was there to talk about the game, and it was still this transactional mindset of we're going to make this game and hopefully you're going to buy it from us. And every single question they asked was about what happens after the game is released. Like, are you going to, are you going to provide a Linux server? Are we going to be able to configure the servers? Are we going to be able to create custom maps for our guilds and communities and clans? And I'm getting peppered with all these questions, and I'm realizing, like, wow, these guys are thinking way beyond the way we're used to thinking about developing a product. So we released Airborne, and like the sales were really good, and I noticed that in week 2, it was like the sales started to fall off, and it was like we were not there building out the feature set. We were not following up the game. We were not building the content that the fans wanted. The fans were there when we started, and I realized, number one, I never want to make a game that's not community driven, and number two, I have this meme that's stuck in my head: be ready when they get there. Like when you launch your game, be ready for it to take off and go in a number of potential directions. So that was probably, you ask about when in your career was the context switch, and that was a huge moment for me.
That's really interesting, and thank you for sharing that with me. And as we've kind of talked, it becomes evident to me that I think a lot of times we can think about community-driven gaming and simply just see that as the act of a broadcaster and an audience member sort of interacting in some way or maybe playing. But in reality, it's also about what the community is saying about the game. And now we do have a very fast feedback loop that can occur. As a gamer, personally, one of the things that is the worst is when you have a game you love and it doesn't get necessarily the support that you as a gamer want. So I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe even one of the tools is the ability to get this instant feedback loop. And if you are going to support your game, after the fact and launch through thick and thin, then suddenly you're sort of rewarded by a community who's very vocal and has ideas. And obviously you can't make everyone happy, but you can get sort of the feedback that comes from the people who love and play your games.
Absolutely. Well, so we get a huge variety of feedback. In the old days, it was you'd have a focus group, and you had no idea who was coming to give you feedback, and I think that's still done often in the industry. Then there's like the early access models where you're trying to deliberately to release the game early, so that you get customer feedback early, and you have the opportunity to shape the game. One of the things we do at the studio, and we have done since Double Helix, is we do expert gamer feedback. So they're not focus groups; they are literally championship caliber players. Almost all of them are broadcasters, and many of them have seen things that only members of the team have seen. Literally nobody else inside of Amazon has even seen it. But we bring them in, and we're actually very regimented about how we play the game, how we expose them to it. And then typically, it's amazing how generous these guys are, because they will come in and spend hours with the development team saying, I don't know about this character, or I don't know about the approach you took to this particular mechanic, or I see what you're going for, but it wasn't intuitive, and this is how I think I would have grasped it earlier. And the developers on the team dig really, really deep. Before the game is even out, before it's being broadcast, before it's released in any form, they're consulting with these guys who can sit down in front of a brand new game and literally be experts at it in 5 minutes. And so they dive deeper than any other type of gamer, faster, and they're sitting with the game teams and helping them shape the experience. And it's amazing. And it's all because of this sort of new portal into what it means to be a passionate gamer.
I do have one follow-up question to that, but Mike, do you have anything to add?
Nope.
Okay. My follow-up question would be I find that interesting because I agree, right? Like these broadcasters and even the audience members, they can look at these experiences from a different perspective, especially that we've looked at them before as gamers. At the same time, they're not game designers. So is it, is there a balance to be? Are you just looking more for like, well, what is the broadcaster feeling? Like, what is the experience that they are thinking about? Because that might not be exactly the same in terms of like, how do we get through that with design?
Yeah, so, well, number one, it's amazing how well-versed in mechanics. You can have a game like Killer Instinct that runs at 60 frames a second, and you have these guys saying, this guy should have frame advantage over this guy because they know in 1/60th of a second when they press the button and they recognize that the balance was just slightly off. So they are, we found them to be amazingly well-versed in what we're trying to achieve. But then the other half of it is, it's the team half of it, where you listen to the feedback and you hear what people are saying, but as Henry Ford said, if I listened to customers, I would have built a faster horse. It's not always building the faster horse. It's about hearing the feedback and then applying our expertise as developers to try to deliver the results, maybe not in exactly the way they anticipated, or not exactly the solution they anticipated, but in a way that exceeds and delights and goes further.
Let's talk a little bit about just a hypothetical vision for the future. As we've seen trends in gaming where, different genres have kind of taken over different eras. We talked a little bit about the FPS genre. I remember getting my first, Wolfenstein Doom download from a BBS somewhere. and then it was like every 6 months I felt like I was just kind of like seeing the instant evolution of first-person shooters. But as we see more, engagement with Twitch and broadcasters and audience members, do you see a world of sort of community-driven gaming where it almost does trump maybe some of those, standalone single-player experience where I'm just kind of like playing with, by myself, even if I am sharing that with the community? Do you also maybe see other games adapt the idea and features of community-driven gaming to enhance those experiences? I'm just curious, like, how do you sort of see this in the future?
No question. We're here because we think this is the center of gravity for the entire game industry. We think this is where everything is going. To your point about single-player games, even single-player games can become community-driven games, right?
Absolutely.
I got through Outlast because you did a lot of it first, and so we watched that stuff. But then even beyond that, you mentioned Twitch Plays Pokemon, which was kind of like poking at an anthill, and then the whole mountain woke up, and you realize, like, wow, what vein did we strike as part of this process? We are just learning about the potential. That's why this is so exciting. We're in the first 1 or 2 years, not even in the first generation, of responding to what we're starting to see and appreciate and developing ideas and concepts that embrace the magnitude of what we're seeing. And I think it's going to. We think it's big now. I think it's going to be enormous.
Awesome, Mike. What do you think?
I think we're just getting started. I mean, that's the easiest way to put it. Just incredibly impressed by the community that's sort of born and thrived on Twitch. And just to think about the interactions that are happening with humans and the amount of fun that's being had and the experiences that are being shared and created on the fly by the community for the community, to create games that have this sort of the simple purpose of providing the framework upon which all that creative energy can exist and can thrive is, I feel like we have some of the best jobs on the planet. It's unbelievably fun.
I'm very excited for the future, for what you guys have in store for us. I think the only thing that could make today better is if you're like, and by the way, we have what? I'll hold on to my horses.
Tuned.
I think, Patrick, you make a great point in that, the gaming trends, they're identified, but then as much as I would love to snap a finger and a game just appears in front of me, that there's a development process.
In due time,
it will happen.
Yeah. So we are out of time. I want to give you guys an opportunity. Anything else you'd like to say to the Twitch community while we've got them here? Anything to wrap up?
We believe you guys are the center of the universe. We appreciate everything you do. You guys, we are doing what we do for you. So, Filthy Rich, community manager at Double Helix. Reach out to him if you have ideas, if you have contributions, if there's anything you want to say, then there he is. He's right there. He just waved his hands.
Filthy Rich.
We want to hear from you. We want to build things for you. So I'm happy to have you participate in everything we do.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Patrick and Mike for joining us here for this talk. Really appreciate it. Want to let you know we have one more tech talk coming up. We have a company showing off a new VR experience, and that will be coming up in just a moment. So please stick around. We'll be right back. Thank you.